Hari. Jaya Gopi Jana Bhalabha Girivaradhari. Jashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shatashi Shrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shatashi Shrimad His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Garantara Shrimad Bhagavatam ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shishiguru and Shiguranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Summon Bonum, Chapter 44, the Killing of Kamsa, text number 50 and 51. Mataram Pitaram Chaiva Mochaji Tvathavandanat Krishna Rama Bhavandate Sirasha Prishyapadayo Mataram Pitaram Chaiva Mochaji Tvathavandanat Krishna Rama Bhavandante Shirashas Prishyapadayo Mataram Pitaram Chaiva Mochaji Tvathavandanat Krishna Rama Bhavadate Shirashas Prishyapadayo. Please chant. Mataram Pitaram Chaiva Mataram, their mother, Pitaram, father, Cha, and Eva, also, Muchajitwa, releasing, Atha, then, Bandhanat, from their fetters, Krishna, Ramao, Krishna and Balaram, Babandate, pay obeisances, Shirasha, with their heads, Sprisha, touching, Padayoho, their feet. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Then Krishna and Balaram released their mother and father from bondage and offer obeisances to them, touching their feet with their heads. Text number 51. Devaki Vasudevascha Vijnana Jagat Ishwarao Krita Sambandhanao Putrao Saswayate Nashankitao. Translation. Devaki and Vasudeva, now knowing Krishna and Balaram to be the lords of the universe, simply stood with joined palms. Being apprehensive, they did not embrace their sons. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Jnana Tasmai Sri Gurube Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Ramapada Swami. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. These two verses, verse number 51, does end the purpose of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 10th canto, 44th chapter of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, entitled The Killing of Kamsa. So I'll read the commentaries of the Acharyas, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Jiva Goswami, and Srila Sanatana Goswami on these two verses. Text number 50. Again, then Krishna and Balaram released their mothers and father from bondage and offer obeisances to them, touching their feet with their heads. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments. Krishna and Balaram touched their heads prominently to the feet of Vasudeva and Devaki. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is highlighting that it was a specific, the heads touching the feet. Sometimes, one goes like this, and goes this, right? But this time it is even a much more graphic sign of respect when you go directly when your head and put your head in the feet of the personality that you're respecting and worshiping. So that was what Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is highlighting. Srila Jiva Goswami comments, they released their parents and later offer respects. Unable to tolerate other griefs, he was first eager to make arrangements for the wife of their deceased husband, When all people have left, the noise subsided. The two boys then touched their heads completely to their parents' feet. In this case, Jiva Goswami is going through the events that happens, which we just read about the lamentations of the wives of Kamsa and the wonderful displays of kindness and thoughtfulness of Krishna towards these ladies. And also quite amazing the narration of the reactions of the wife of Kamsa. So basically, Srila Jiva Goswami is saying that first Krishna took care of that. Instead of rushing towards to free their parents, and that was one of his main objectives. Especially when Krishna descends into this world, paritranaya sadhunan vinashaya chaduskritam, when demons are harassing the devotees. So in this case, Vasudeva and Devaki, they suffer so much under the tyranny of Kamsa. So instead of achieving his goal, Krishna's goal, Krishna and Balaram's goal to kill Kamsa and free their parents from this situation, before doing that, he took care of the wives of Kamsa. And it's quite something. When we read that part, it's quite amazing that first you see the wives lamenting pitifully and screaming, oh my Lord, you're the protector of religion, you're the protector of all those who are weak, right? They were saying all these things, beating on their heads, like that, and crying and lamenting that this person who was their protector and who was, who they were attached to, was dead. Especially when they declare he was, the protector of their, religiosity and this and that. It's like, But then they come to say, all these horrible things that you did were the cause of your death. You were always unhappy. You could not be happy because you committed all these atrocities. And you couldn't recognize Krishna and Balaram as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you go from all these sentimental displays, which were basically blinded to the reality of Kamsa being this terrible, horrible demon who was, Dharma Sanstapanartayo, that there was, it was the person who was not the protector of religion, but who was, the person who was destroying religious principles. So going from that into a position of being fully aware and knowledgeable, so from sentimentality to common sense, to be able to see things objectively, and like that. So the Acharyas comments that, they were able to do that because of Krishna's association. So just by being in the presence of Krishna, they became purified and their minds became, sober, and they were able to understand. So therefore, Krishna is declared as the, the deliverer of all lamentations and suffering, just even by being in Krishna's presence. If you are actually, if you're not envious, and it is said that these ladies, they were the wives of Kamsa, they were simple. They were not, crooked and deviant, like these heavy-duty demons like Kamsa. And then Krishna, it is said, with tears in his eyes, he consoled them. And he sort of blamed himself, out of a human anger. I did all this. I caused the suffering of all these, ladies. Mind, this is part of Krishna's dynasty. Kamsa was part of Krishna's, basically dynasty, family, basically. Kamsa was his uncle. So, so these are all relatives. So he arranged for the funeral. So there was a lot of commotion here. So Krishna took care of that business, set up that straight. The ladies were pacified. The rituals and the funeral rituals was done, according to the Vedic directions. It is important to do these funeral rituals to complete. Throughout life, there is so many samskaras that you have to perform, that everybody, to have an auspicious existence in this world, one have to go through all these samskaras, these all rituals, starting with the birth ritual, Garbhadam samskara. Conception. From the time of conception, you start with a samskara to the time of death. That's the last of the samskaras that you do through your life. If you don't do that, then you are going to affect your next birth. So it's very important. So in Vedic tradition, it was very important to actually perform these last rituals. In fact, to not do that is guarantee the suffering in the next life of this individual. They won't be able to actually rise to, they're expecting that these Vedic personalities that follow all these rules and regulations according to the Vedas, they will elevate themselves to the heavenly planets, and enjoy there in the heavenly planets and this all. If you don't do that, then you have to suffer some reaction, sometimes some hellish reaction, or sometimes you just not able to rise yourself to the heavenly planet. But it was a very important thing. I remember as kids, we were not exposed to the Vedic culture, of course, neither to the Mahabharata nor to the Ramayana. So you don't get, the sense of that culture. But, the one that we were exposed is the Iliad and the Odyssey. which was, you know, is the mini Mahabharata of the Greek culture. And in that, there was a story of Troy, right? And then there was, you know, these characters, especially Achilles was this powerful warrior. He was, you know, the most feared and powerful warrior that was at that time, you know, part of what it was. Troy was, you know, one of the kingdoms of Greece, and then I think Achilles was part. When there was a big kingdom, and can't remember the details. You know, it was so long, but I remember this specifically because this prince Paris stole a queen or a prince that was to be married to this big demoniac guy who was a king also in another kingdom, and he took it to his city, which was Troy, which was the most, you know, powerful kingdom at that time, you know, and that caused, you know, this war. And Paris has a brother, Hector, and Hector had a fight with Achilles, and Achilles killed him. But Achilles, you know, he was so revengeful that he wanted to even punish this. Hector was a very righteous, you know, warrior. But Achilles, you know, killed him and told him, you know, Hector tried to make this pact with him. He knows, you know, that this guy was too powerful, so most likely he's gonna be killed. So he said, well, either whoever wins, just promise that we will have, you know, we will send to our people to do the proper rites for the dead. And Achilles denied him of that, and took him, after killing him, tie him and drag him, you know, around the arena, and then, you know, left with the dead body, and didn't want to release the dead body. So the king of Troy had to go and plead, beg, you know, Achilles to release his son. So anyway, I'm saying this, how important these rites were, and Krishna make the arrangement for the queens, you know. Once they're pacified, then, and the whole noise, you know, move on, then Krishna went to, Krishna and Balaram went to free their parents. So that's what is described, and then, you know, they offer their respects and their obeisances to their parents. Srila Sanatana Goswami comments in this verse. After that, after making arrangements for Kansa's body, because he could not tolerate other suffering, Krishna, he freed first his mother out of extreme affection and to please Vasudeva, and then free Vasudeva, his father, since he could not tolerate their bondage. The two boys touched their heads to their feet, showing great devotion to them. Krishna is mentioned first, since he was filled with compassion and did this first. Balaram followed his actions. And then the comments of the same wonderful acharyas of text number 51. The 51 reads like, Devaki and Vasudeva, now knowing Krishna and Balaram to be the lords of the universe, simply stood with joined palms, being apprehensive. They did not embrace their sons. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, remembering the events of Krishna's birth and seeing the power he displayed on killing Kamsa, Vasudeva and Devaki, seeing him as the Lord, could not embrace him. Because of consciousness of custom, parents do not bow to the children. Neither did they offer pranam. Being fearful and paralyzed, they simply stood there. Srila Jiva Goswami comments, they knew that the two boys were the lords of the universe, particularly Vijaya, since they have just seen their astonishing actions. They develop realization of their great power, remembering the news about their birth. They become frightened, thinking of their sons as the lords of the universe. Though the two sons were now devoted, offering respects, they did not embrace their sons, but stood offering respects and praise. Vishnu Purana says, Uttapya Vasudevastam Devaki cha Janardanam Smrita Jammokta Vachanao Taveva Pranataustitao. Translation, Vasudeva and Devaki raised Krishna from the ground, and remembering the words spoken at his birth, they offer respect to him. The long prayers is recorded in the Vishnu Purana. This is what is going to follow in the next chapter. Chapter 45. Sanatana Goswami, Srila Sanatana Goswami comments, they knew the boys were the Supreme Lords in a special way. Previously they saw Krishna's remarkable form in the prison, but now they had seen and heard about his astonishing actions and realized them as lords of the universe. Or, experiencing the boys with parental love in prema was superior to knowing them as lords of the universe. In this way, the realization was special, Vijnanaya. Or, they knew them as the lords of the universe, they had offered respect to the parents, praised them, and stood there. Or, though they knew that the two, as the Supreme Lords, they were not worried, but embraced them since they accept them as their sons and offer respects. Devaki is mentioned first since she was the main person to embrace with affection. Later, the parents placed the boys on their laps out of intense affection after the Lord spread his Maya out of mercy to cover their awareness of him as the Lord. So, Srila Sanatana Goswami gave a much more broad picture that basically describes what's going to be happening, what is going to be narrated in chapter 45, which is very beautiful and is quite telling, because what is being highlighted here is the huge conflict that happens that basically paralyzes Vasudeva and Devaki, because they couldn't, that moment, they couldn't offer, they couldn't embrace the boys who were their sons, and they have parental affection towards, and they couldn't offer obeisances, and pranams. They were just paralyzed and actually sort of freaked out a little bit, It was like a clash of two things that were conflicting, the intimate connection and this awe and reverence. And the two clashes and mix, and it created, some huge internal disturbance. They, it's two things that they could not exist together. Because one is intimacy, the other one is like, oh, so they cannot be together. So that's why they became paralyzed. And it's just natural when you become aware of Krishna's greatness. The only thing that is there when you are in that state of understanding and knowledge, that stage is called the Vasudev stage. Vasudev means the stage of transcendental knowledge. And in transcendental knowledge, you're able to understand in full the absolute truth. And when you're able to understand the absolute truth in full, then you surrender. You become fully surrendered. So it arises devotion and surrendering. Krishna explains that in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Chaturshloki verses, the first one, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, Matva Sarvam Prabhantate, Iti Matva Bhajante Mam. So someone who's able to see, to understand that Krishna is the source of everything, the Lord of the universe. Everything comes from him. He's the cause of all causes. Then he naturally surrenders and performs devotional service. So you become devoted to. That's that Vasudev stage. So both Devaki and Vasudev were fully aware of Krishna's and Balaram's position. They understood the absolute truth. They understood them as the cause of all causes. They understood, just like that stage of Vasudev, is the beginning or the introduction of the SRIMAD Bhagavatam. That's how the Bhagavatam starts, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yammadhyase Jaton Vayat Itaras Chatarsu Abhigyaswara. So all that, understanding Krishna as the source of the creation, the destruction, the maintenance of the whole universe. He is independent, powerful, all-cognizant. And then all that leads to what? To Satyam Param Dimahi. Therefore, I meditate on him because he is the absolute truth. So that's their position. That's the Vasudev stage. But then, the natural thing is that, the natural position of that stage is that you look the Lord of the universe, Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan. So you look at him in his position, his, all-powerful position, and you happily situated from the position of being, a servant in awe and reverence, with folded hands, just looking up to him. But then there is that personality in this most beautiful, charming form, lovingly and with devotion, touching their feet touching your feet with their heads. That doesn't make sense. And they're showing all this, the affection of a child, of of your children. And so they couldn't do that. And then Krishna in the next chapter, which is what Srila Sanatana Goswami expand, will cover them with the Yoga Maya potency. And once the Yoga Maya hits, then that knowledge or awareness of Krishna's position becomes cover, Maya. Maya means, there's a covering potency of the Lord. So this Yoga Maya is for those who are fully pure and those who are fully devoted to the Lord. Who are in that position, on that Vasudev position. So those who are fully on that position and are fully devoted, perfectly devoted, then the Yoga Maya covers. And they're able to enter into this relationship with Krishna. They're able to actually fully manifest the parental affection. And then we're going to see Devaki, sits Krishna and Balaram in her lap and then feed them, breast milk. Like that. She was able to finally fully manifest her maternal, relationship. And, the love of the mother, like that. So it's very beautiful and it's very touching. It's part of what we get exposed with the SRIMAD Bhagavatam of Krishna's dealings with his devotees. Very different, that what we receive from other major religions and things like that, in which God is always, seen in that, at base, in that manner of awe and reverence. But, it's almost, more highlighting the fear of someone so powerful and so great that you better don't mess up, because it can basically squash you, punish you if you get out of line. So you better you better straight up. That image of the all-powerful God. But in this case, we get exposed to its most beautiful and loving personality that creates all this arrangement to have this very touching relationships, with his devotee. So looking forward for, more and more text, chapter 45 that is coming. Any comments or questions?
I was wondering, thank you for the class for sure. And I'm wondering, I've heard that actually we worship Lakshmi Narayan and not Radha Krishna.
So the idea is Radha and Krishna, Kishore, Kishori, We're not saying Lakshmi Narayan, it's Kishore Kishori. But we worship them in the mode of awe and reverence, which is the worship of Lakshmi Narayan. So it's the mood, not the personality.
It's just a comment. Like you mentioned, Kamsa's wives were simple and they were confessing. Again, later on, we see that Kamsa's wives they go to their father Jarasandha.
And so what?
Kamsa's wives, you mentioned they are simple and they were lamenting of the Kamsa's death, and they were simple and they know the what is religious, right? And later on, we see that Kamsa's wife, they go to their father Jarasandha and confessed the complaint on Krishna, saying that Krishna has did so much. So that's where Jarasandha starts getting envy of Krishna. So how do we process?
Yeah, it's as I guess association. I mean, you can be by association with Krishna and Krishna's devotee. We get that we get the purification to be able to see things properly. But then, if we go back to the association, then you're you can lose that. So it happens to devotees too. We see it in our level too. You see it many times. I've seen it many times. Really nice devotees, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they leave, and they start to associate, and then all those good qualities, start, all the things are starting to manifest again. So Krishna promised them that, I think Srila Sanatana Goswami comments, Krishna promised them that, you should not worry. You are now under my protection. Like that. It's not that you're now that you don't have a protector, your husband is dead, don't worry, you'll be on my protection. So if they didn't take that protection, they went back to the father, and the father didn't need the daughter's complaint. The father hated Krishna. They were all associates of Kamsa, and they, that guy was determined, Jarasandha. 17 times defeated. So, so association. Association is the thing that, so one cannot take for granted. Unless you come to the position of Vasudeva, then you can take it for granted. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami tells, negative and positive, that, the 6 things that we have to do to grow in consciousness, in Krishna consciousness, is you don't associate with non-devotees. You associate with devotees. And then and the things that we should not do is that you don't associate with the non-devotees, like that. So it's like emphasized, because, we will be affected. We will be affected.
you were explaining the Vasudeva and Devaki being in this state of purity, the Vasudeva state where there is actually an understanding of Krishna and Balaram's position. So that is existing all the time, even in their parental role. So in this particular moment, the fact that the problem was that that understanding overrode the parental role, in a sense. And I was just reflecting, I mean, you gave a very nice picture that showed how indeed it was possible for that aspect of Krishna and Balaram as, the cause of all causes, the controllers of the universe, to become prominent, because even as very young boys, they're tending to both eliminating a king, attending to and his brothers, and attending to all the wives and the funeral rites, etc. And I was just reflecting that there's also the aspect that Vasudeva and Devaki had not been in direct contact with Krishna and Balaram for 11 years. So that must also be a factor in the whole picture of the discomfort in this moment. It's not a simple moment of being reunited, because also there's that whole time period of separation. I was just reflecting.
Yeah, possibly. But for sure, the highlight is on that clash, the clash of, these incompatible moods of, rasa bas type of thing. There's mix of rasas that don't mix, and therefore, paralysis, can do this, can do that, so the natural flow of parental affection, regardless, when you love someone so much, and when you finally become reunited, it's like, the flow is pretty intense. And the flow of affection, and all that, tears comes, all these type of emotions comes, and that gets all blocked. Imagine, that like a flow comes out like that and gets, interrupted or blocked. The movement gets blocked, so it's all freaked. It's not natural. And that's what happens, the knowledge, this knowledge of Krishna's position was blocking that flow. And then it is also explained that Vasudeva and Devaki, they have this very special position that where there's combinations of awe and reverence and parental affection, which is usually, so they bounce in between, Same happened to them when Krishna took birth. There was a discussion on that, first when Krishna manifests, appears in his, Vishnu form, in front of them, they were in awe and reverence. And then they bounce, Devaki, please assume you're, just hide yourself because cancer can kill you, So, they bounce in between these two things, and it's very bewildering. But But the beautiful thing again, you know, we're going to hear in the next chapter how Krishna covers them, and then they allows the full flow to just go for both of them. So it's quite touching. Okay. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you so much.